Hey everyone, welcome to our first Food Tank members meeting of the year. I am not my cutest self right now. I have a very bad eye infection that is going to take several weeks to recover from. So this is how you're going to see me from now on. I can't open one eye, so I apologize, and I also tear up all the time, especially when Alice Waters is talking because she's my like one of my favorite people in the world. So sorry that I'm not quite camera ready. Now that I have that behind us, I can share a few updates. Food Tank has just returned from the Sundance Film Festival. We had the opportunity to partner with the organization Fed by Blue, which focuses on aquatic foods, and we co-hosted three really wonderful days of film screenings of docuseries with folks like Andrew Zimmern and others. And the events were packed with a lot of great folks, Food Tank members like yourselves, but also investors from Hulu, Netflix, Discovery, and some major film studios. We had our friends from the Rockefeller Foundation there showing their film Food 2050, about food system visionaries from all over the world. Before Sundance, I was in Oxford, England at the Real Food Farming Conference, then in Abu Dhabi at the Food Tech Challenge event, and really trying to make some inroads for our work on COP28, which will be held in Dubai, and met with some great partners who you'll be hearing about very soon. So please check back to the Food Tank website for what we're planning. We're also planning a monthly series on Capitol Hill around issues like hunger and higher education, and also other food and agriculture issues. Our full lineup for the Sundance Festival our final lineup for South by Southwest will be on the website soon. We're really excited about it. That is in March. And we're gearing up for things in September already, like NYC Climate Week. So just stay tuned. As Food Tank members, you are of course invited to all of this, and hopefully I'll have two working eyes by then. Today I'm just so thrilled that we have Alice Waters with us. She is a wonderful visionary, and we were just had another conversation with her, which is why I'm still teared up. But um, uh, I just really do want to dive into conversation, Alice, because you have so much to say, and I know that our audience will want some time for Q&A. So let me just introduce you. I say this every time I try to introduce you. You're impossible to introduce. You're a chef. You're a visionary. You're a globally recognized food systems advocate. You're an author. You're one of the most important champions, if not the most important champion of the local food movement. You founded Chez Panisse, which changed how all of us in this country eat and all over the world. You're the founder of the Edible Schoolyard Project. You were the first woman ever to win the James Beard Best Chef Award, and you've earned over 24 other awards and honors for cooking, environmentalism, and humanitarianism. And you are my personal hero so thank you so much. So earlier this month, I was saying before that I received a text from Alice, which always makes me happy. And she reached out to talk about her recent thoughts on school supported agriculture. And I really wanted our members to hear from her, because you all are so interested in these things and so passionate, especially around schools and local and regional food systems. And there's really no one better to talk about that than Alice. So Alice, I want to jump into this idea of the power of procurement and how you've been championing that with the Edible Schoolyard, with all the work that you've done at different universities. What is this power of procurement, and why is it so special and unique, and why should we be championing it more?
It's so important because it has the potential of bringing a set of human values into the school. When you bring in fast food, you bring in those values. I mean, you know what that's all about when, in fact, many schools have actual fast food restaurants on the campuses now. But when you bring in slow food, if you will, and I feel very confident about this because I have been buying food for Chez Panisse. Mind you, it's only maybe at the most 500 people a day, but I have bought that food directly from the farmer, from the rancher, from the fisher person. And when I did that, I built this kind of relationship that is so valuable to me. They taught me so much. And it was really that that gives me the confidence that it could happen the way it happened at Chez Panisse. But again, I have also worked at a middle school with 1,000 kids. And I actually helped to design a cafeteria for that school. But I know for sure, and we only use organic regenerative food in the garden classroom or the kitchen classroom, but the food that the kids cook really empowers them. And they are changed by it. And I know this is the power of procurement is exposing the students to local, ripe food. And most kids and most adults have never had that. I mean, I grew up, you know, in my parents' victory garden during World War II. And I still can taste those strawberries that I ate out in the garden. But it's something incredibly powerful, is not only the eating of that food, but eating it together with your friends and eating it with your schoolmates. There's, you just feel something very important. And I think we've lost so much of that sense of community and how much our friends can teach us, our schoolmates can teach us, but we're never allowed in schools to gather except out there on the crazy, you know, play yard. But it's a different experience sitting down together in a school.
And I think what, you know, you mentioned what we can lose and what we can gain from growing our own food, from local and regional procurement, from having relationships with farmers. And I think one of the most important things, Alice, that we have lost is this sense of personal empowerment. And by bringing that back, by bringing the power of food sovereignty back to schools, to institutions, to households, we all become empowered, don't we?
Oh, indeed, we do. And I want to empower the farmers who are feeding us and taking care of the land for the future. They're addressing both nutrition and climate. And that's really the only hopeful solution to climate, from my point of view. Everything that they ask us to do costs money or changes our habits, and we think it's hard work. But changing the way we eat is something so pleasurable.
Yeah.
Going to a farmer's market, buying food from a farm stand, knowing what your friends are growing in their backyard garden. At the beginning of Chez Panisse, we used to trade lunch at Chez Panisse for people who brought us food from their gardens. I know we weren't supposed to do that, but when rules are wrong, I want to violate them, and I want to go to court if they say we can't have an open kitchen. I was ready to go, but all of the food inspectors who came to Chez Panisse never even noticed that there wasn't a door between the kitchen and the dining room. They said they've never seen such a clean kitchen. And I know just crazy things, like when we were designing the cafeteria for the school, I said, I don't want the walls to be white. And I read the rules. They just have to be light colored and easy to clean. Well, we did pale yellow, and it warmed up the kitchen in a beautiful way. You don't have to have fluorescent lights. But that comes with this corporate production that happens for school kitchens. They get the one person who brings in all the stainless steel and all the
Right.
all the stuff that we don't need to cook.
Absolutely.
Cooking is something that needs hands and needs care, but it's not about it. Those things push us away from the food. And so I really want to think about designing kitchens for human values.
Sure, sure. And I mean, Alice, you're not only thinking of designing kitchens, you're thinking of designing policy. In our last meeting a few minutes ago, you were talking about a very interesting discussion with US Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack. And, you know, I think you would really, and I don't mean to speak for you, but you would really like some rules to be broken at USDA because they need to be some of the terms they
Yes.
used. You mentioned climate smart agriculture, when what we need is regenerative, climate friendly practices that enhance our soils, make them places where carbon can be sequestered, make our food systems, you know, more climate friendly because of what we're eating seasonally, that we're eating things that are good for us and good for the planet. That rule breaking is what has made you the pioneer that you are. How do you encourage others to sort of do that? You're talking to kids, you're talking to young people, you're talking to food tank members right now, who I think are a lot of rule breakers, to be honest.
Well, good. I gave a class at UC Berkeley the other night, and we were talking about all of this. But I got to the point in the meeting, I said, you know, there's a huge piece of land at the entrance of the UC campus, and it's just got grass on it. Why don't we just come one night and dig it up? And I said, who wants to join me to plant a vegetable garden? And really, like a third of the students raised their hands right away. But it's that kind of excitement of working together. It's Habitat for America. It's Jimmy Carter. It's saying that we can do this if we do it together. And I was part of a Habitat for Humanity event that happened in a school in San Francisco maybe 30 years ago. And in one day, we painted the inside and outside of the school and built a whole garden. And it was so gratifying. Every time I go past the school, I just say, I helped to do that. And we need to feel that empowerment as communities, as people who live in this country. Absolutely. We need to feel like we can do this together. And I think that was part of the Victory Gardens of the 40s. And we We have thousands of pamphlets that tell us what you should plant in different climates around the whole country. I've read one that said there were 23 varieties of strawberries in the DC area. I wanted to taste every one. I wanted that to happen. It's about biodiversity of the place where we live. We have come to think there's nothing here except in California. But let me tell you, there are only avocados for a very short period of time in California. Everything has tomatoes. Maybe 3 months we get tomatoes, but we don't get them year round. And people think that we should because that's what fast food tells us.
Absolutely.
And it's not true.
No.
And we're destroying all of the avocados in Mexico because we're importing them and they use so much water and they change the whole landscape. And it's just important that we eat locally. And it's only been 60, 70 years that we haven't done that. We ordered coffee, tea, and spices, but that was it.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's such a good reminder to know that it has been such a short period. That's like a lifetime. And for most people, that's not even their whole lifetime. So that it's a good reminder that we can go back. We can go. I mean, this is an idea where, it's not an antiquated notion. This is an idea that will serve us well. You brought up biodiversity, Alice, and I know that's such an important topic to you given your work with Slow Food International, but biodiversity of what we eat, how we grow, it's so connected to so many other things. It's connected to our health. It's connected to the health of our climate. It's connected to the health of our soils. And I'm wondering how you, as an advocate, a chef, an educator, makes those linkages for eaters so that they understand that biodiversity is not something away from them or outside of them, but something that contributes to their overall health and vitality in this world.
Yeah, I do talk about it a lot and talk about it in my books, but every night at Chez Panisse, downstairs, we have a different menu. And people have been coming and eating, 4 or 5 courses every time they come. And we put on the names of everything that we're serving. So they're scarlet turnips or Tokyo turnips now, and they learn that during the course of their meal. And when you fall in love with Tokyo turnips, then you go out and you want to find out how you can plant those. But we, in different varieties are happening at different times. So we may have one kind of peach, a fail bird of peach at one little moment, but then we go on to the next peach and learn its name. And I just am, and learn about the taste of that. It's like really opening your mind in the most beautiful way. It's like having all of these colors of roses in your garden, and you're just smelling different ones. And it is connecting you to the biodiversity of nature. And I think that the thing that has helped me the most in the last 20 years is walking every morning, that I go and walk and see. I notice the trees, the fruits, the vegetables that are planted, and it gives me ideas of what to put in my garden. And it's that keeps, it's like art, that you're going to a museum and you're seeing all these different artists work, and it's like that in nature. And I think that once you get connected, you will make all the right decisions. I
Sure.
was talking about that you can't wait for for that lemon verbena to get big.
That's wonderful. Before I turn to questions from our members, there's a question that keeps puzzling me that I've been asking
Yes.
experts like you, Alice. During the pandemic, despite all of the tragedy that was causing, I ended up feeling very hopeful for that first year because I thought that there was such a focus, given the supply chain issues and everything else that was happening, that local and regional food systems would finally rise to the place that they deserve, right? That they would get the funding, that they would get the investment to really, we build, processing plants for livestock, that we'd build canneries and tinneries, that we'd have local processing facilities and community kitchens that, would these things would be bubbling up, that mayors and council members would just be, asking for them. And I think we've forgotten, unfortunately, all of that happened during the pandemic, and it continues to bother me. How can we revive that sort of interest that happened in the first 6 months around regional and localized food systems?
Well, it bothers me too, I have to say. And I thought we were going to get a lot of momentum from uh, from the exposure of the corporate food system, when all those animals were left to die rather than to feed them. And the people, we understood what it took to work in a slaughterhouse, and that boat that went down in the Suez. I mean,
Right.
it was shocking, completely shocking. And I really thought that we would hear from the government a real plan. So, of course, I want a garden on the front lawn of the White House, and no reason why we shouldn't have a garden there, telling us to do it ourselves wherever we can do it. As Ron Finley says, the gorilla gardener from Los Angeles, he says, growing food is like printing your own money. And the first thing I did in front of my house during the pandemic was to dig up that little strip, the parkway, my property, and plant garlic there. That was the first thing. And then I dug up my whole front yard, which is not big, but I put a big victory garden sign and I just started planting salad and herbs and things that I wanted to be sure I had. But I got lots of comments about, how do you keep the deer away? I'm going to do this. But we need that cheerleading from the federal government, from the state governments. And I know we're getting a lot in California right now. They're going to do a big homeless garden because, there is a garden at Santa Cruz that everyone should know about, that was started many, many years ago by a Buddhist gardener. And he has shown that in working in that garden, it can rehabilitate everybody. And every homeless person who works in that garden either stays there forever or finds a job elsewhere. And it's such an important project, because we don't just need houses, we need meaningful work.
Absolutely.
And gardening is meaningful work. When I started the Edible Schoolyard Project, it happened because a woman named Catherine Sneed started a garden at the San Francisco County Jail. And she called me and said, would I buy vegetables if she grew them to my specification? And I said, yes, I will. And I said, just send them. She said, oh no, you have to come and meet my students.
Right.
And I was so ashamed that I went. And this one kid raised his hand. Catherine said, tell Alice about your experience. And he said, I shouldn't say anything. It's my first day in the garden, and it's the best day of my life.
Oh.
And I just said right then, if you can do it in a jail, you can do it in a school. And that is really what empowered me to start the Edible Schoolyard Project, which I told you has 65, 62, 6,500 schools around the world that just heard about it and wanted to do it. So it's not something that we can't do.
Right.
It's
Right.
something we can do. I mean, a group of parents could plant a garden near a school where the students could come, or they could plant a garden in a school, up a wall in the parkway, like Ron Finley in front of the school. But this can happen. And
I mean, Alice, you were making things go viral before we had, memes on the internet. You were making things happen all over the world with the Edible Schoolyard Project. And I think that's sort of the lesson that I have learned from you, and that I want others to know, that by showing
yes,
success, by showing progress, by showing that yes, this does work. This is not rocket science, by the way. This is, you have to have, it's very knowledge intensive to grow food, but we're not sending people to Mars. We are growing food in a way that is in concert with the planet, that nourishes our soils, that protects our biodiversity, that contributes to helping hopefully reversing climate
yeah,
change. So these are not things that we can all do this
yes,
together.
we can. And we all go to school, or should have gone, and we all eat every day, or should. And so those are two universals. Everybody does this. And I think we have relied on the government to create that curriculum that we need to live together. But we need to learn about what it is to live in a democracy. And a democracy means that everybody has something to contribute. It's like regenerative ag. All of those little bugs and everything, plants, make the food nutritious. And so it's like when we support the people who grow the food for the schools, it's the biggest gift that we can give the next generation. We're giving them the values of the people who deeply care. And that's why I like to call it school supported agriculture and not farm to school,
Right.
because I want the farmer to feel like we really count on that person and will buy everything that he or she has, and that we will pay the real cost. I don't want any middleman taking the money. I want to give it directly to the farmers to take care of their farm workers. That's
For
what
sure.
it's so. And I promised Dolores, I swear, excuse me, that the farm workers would be really important in this project, because we need to give them proper places to eat and real food, just like the food that we give to the people who work at Chez Panisse, the food that we give customers. me.
No,
One
no,
moment.
no. Get a glass. And I'll tell folks who Dolores is another true American hero, like daughter so to workers' rights in California and really across this country with Cesar Chavez and others to really make sure, Cesar, who I love as much as anyone can, got all the attention, but Dolores was the power that. So I think, what you, Alice, and what Dolores Huerta have done, and you mentioned this, is shown that democracy in our food systems is important. Everyone has a role. Everyone has rights. Everyone needs to be compensated. These are all part of our, what America was built on. We just need to go back to that.
We do.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to turn to questions for the next maybe 15 minutes. I believe Ursula King can be put on the mic. Elena, my colleague, can you help me do this?
Yep. Ursula will be promoting you to a panelist in just a second, if you wouldn't mind accepting that, and then you can come on screen and ask your question.
And make sure, Ursula, that it's a question, and so that Alice has a chance to answer it.
Hi, Alice.
Hi.
I love seeing you on screen. I met you in Massachusetts when you came to speak at the Food Project. And it was many, many years ago when I was working on an organic farm there. My question is, I live in Tennessee now, and 1 in 6 children experiences hunger in the state of Tennessee. It is 15.5% of people are food insecure in this state, and that there's big correlations, as you know, to obesity and other things. And my question is, what language do you use when you talk about, I lived in California when you started the first food garden, so I've been following you for a long, long time. What language do you use to influence people when you want to do this work in more impoverished school systems, urban school systems, to talk about food justice and childhood hunger and food resilience? I'm a food ecologist, but I struggle with finding words that are meaningful to people.
Well, that's really a good question, because I like to feed people the idea. I don't want to talk to them from a podium or even a circle. I want to talk to them from the table. I want to give them something to eat. I want to give them something that's really delicious and accessible. Even when I want to feed them also in an uncontaminated place. In other words, I don't want to go to the school cafeteria. I want to say, let's meet at the botanical garden or that place where you're not really talking ideas. You're feeding them ideas. You're giving them a sense of the beauty of nature. Just even going outside is a way to communicate. And then I usually find an irresistible farmer to bring something to the gathering. I always their point of view. They always note things that I don't know. And I can assure you that we could teach everybody how to cook really affordable food. I mean, easily. And it's been dismissed by, of course, the fast food industry. You don't need to bother with that, but it is vital that we become engaged with the cooking and the taking care of the waste. I don't want to have any waste. Did I answer your question?
I think you did answer her question. And Alice, I'm sorry, I
Okay.
was on mute. I think what you're speaking about is like what home ec classes used to do back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. They taught people how to cook. They taught them not how, how not to waste. Maybe they were using more processed foods than you would have liked or I would have liked back then, but they were still trying to teach people how to like do things economically and deliciously. And I think, bringing some of that back, making them more, again, democratized, making sure
Yes.
that all genders, however anyone identifies as part of those classes, I think is really important. I want to call next on Rebecca Dengrove, and please keep your answers short so that we can get to as many as possible. So Rebecca, the floor is yours.
Okay. I was curious. I live in Astoria, Queens, and I walk my daughter to school every morning. And there's a bunch of property here that part of the land is just boarded up and hasn't been used. And it seems like a real opportunity for, building on the Victory Garden concept. And I just don't even know where to begin or who to reach out to, understand who owns that land, how can you gain possession of that land for the community and really leverage that space to develop these gardens and do something productive in a sustainable way.
Thanks, Rebecca.
That's a really good question. I mean, there's so many properties. I know Bette Midler has done such great work in New York City, and she still I went on a walk with her around the park, and she was just picking up all the waste as she went by. She was an amazing inspiration to me. But I think a way to understand is to write some kind of message, like we'd like to grow food in this space. Does anybody know who owns it? Maybe somebody in the city knows, maybe a neighbor knows, and that we're just going to board it up. I mean, maybe somebody's going to have a house or sell it, but in the meantime, couldn't we grow food there for people who are hungry? And people, again, think that it's kind of a mess to farm, and it's kind of, it's disorganized. And I think the more that you demonstrate what is possible, and they see pictures of what is possible, the more likely you'll be able to do that. And I'll come cheerlead if you need me.
Alice just made you a promise, Rebecca. You should take her up on that. No, and I think the point about farming being organized and beautiful in places where you wouldn't expect it. My co-founder, Bernie Pollock, and I have traveled, all over sub-Saharan Africa, and you see food being grown in the medians of highways. You see people farming wherever they can because they need to. And, we could be doing similar things in the United States. I think this is a clear example of how we need to learn from the global South. We always think we have so much to teach them, and that's ridiculous to me. We have so much to learn. So I'm going to call on our next question asker, and if you could keep your question short. Alice can talk as long as she wants. I didn't mean to tell her to be cut off before. Let's go with Mitch Vanagan. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your last name, Mitch, but Elena will make sure you're put on a screen and you can say your last name correctly for me. And remember, I'm using one eye. That's why I can't see. Go ahead, Mitch, whenever you're ready.
Sorry.
Okay.
So I'm teaching a kids cooking camp at the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm trying to be more plant forward with what I'm teaching them, but it's been a challenge. Do you have any tips on vegetables to introduce to them too, besides broccoli and carrots, because that seems to be the go-to. And I'm happy with that. But I've tried to introduce kale and like
those are harder. Well, I worked at a Boys and Girls Club in San Francisco, and it's a great success. I mean, you might contact them and see what they're planting, but I've always found that the kids like things that have aroma. And one of my favorite things to do is just get a bunch of mint, put it in a pot and pour hot water over it, and you have mint tea. And they like that kind of transformation. Vegetables, I mean, you'll get to kale. And I always say at the edible school year, it's 6 weeks to kale. But there are other things that obviously the berries are great, raspberries and strawberries, all of those berries, blueberries. I don't know what climate you're in, but I think that that it's important to appeal to all the senses. Something that looks beautiful and smells good, and of course you can pop right in your mouth, is the best appease. I made a little teepee for my daughter. I made a bean teepee and I made a pea teepee, and she would go out there and just sit inside and eat the raw peas and the beans when they were little. But basil is another one. All kids like pesto. Garlic is a kind of magic thing to grow. But again, kids need to be able to explore all of that. And the more little hiding places you can make in the garden, the better.
I love that, Alice. I love that. Okay, final question. Genevieve, please go ahead. Elena will make sure you get on screen. Genevieve McGregor, in case there are multiple Genevieves. What a wonderful name.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. That took a while. Okay. Sorry. Hi, Alice, and hi, Danielle. Thank you for having me. So I have to tell you, Alice, I was just so inspired by, a lot of what you said today, but especially about how you look at things backwards, kind of like with the kitchen, how you said, why does it have to be white and fluorescent lights when we're trying to come together and be nurturing, right? And, and Danielle, when you said, to find beauty in the most unusual, unlikely places. So I'm just going to ask it's probably a yes or no answer. So that'll be short. Do you see, because we've sort of besmirched, and rightfully so, the name of fast food several times in this conversation, because it's kind of the antithesis of what we're talking about. Do you find that there's possibility to transform the fast food industry to be anything even close to what we're talking about? Yeah.
Maybe it could be possible, but I mean, we saw what happened with Whole Foods, and we see what's happening with a lot of, the corporate foods that, they're trying to sort of green the package, but they are, I'm afraid, interested in food chains could be better. But what is happening is we're learning the values of the fast food industry when maybe they have organic food there, but they're serving it in a way that's teaching you a fast food idea, that it's okay to eat in your car, that it's cheaper, that it's okay to eat that way every day. I mean, those are that's what's indoctrinating us, and it's so. I guess my answer is no. I don't think it's possible. Although I do, there are people at the farmers market that will make a little something at their stand, and it's so great. I mean, it is fast food in the sense that you can just pick up that tortilla and eat it, but it's in the context of that whole experience of real food and shopping. So I'm skeptical, but I eat in a fast food way. Sometimes in the morning when I'm making my breakfast, I've got some greens from the night before that I warm up, and I've got my little tortilla, and I just cook it on the fire and put in my greens and sit and eat it.
Listen, I can't believe that anything Alice Waters does is anything while Alice Waters does is fast food in any way. And that kind of leads me, I get the final question because I'm in charge. And so, Alice, I've long admired you. I have long admired Carlo Petrini, and what I have seen happen because of you both is that there's this new generation of young leaders, and who comes to mind as somebody who's a very dear friend to Food Tank, and that's Eddie Mukivi, who is now the president of Slow Food International. And I've known Eddie since he was, I think, 20, and just to see him grow. See, I'm getting emotional, everyone. It's partly because of my eye, but partly because of the work of Alice and Eddie and so many others. You have sparked this new generation of folks like Eddie, Alice, who deeply care about farming and food and resilience in so many ways. And I wonder, Eddie's been in this position for over a year now. What advice do you give to other young people who are just starting out, who are the even younger Eddie Mukivis, who are, in sub-Saharan Africa or Asia or in Detroit, who want to be more like you, who want to be these leaders who change how we think and feel about food?
Well, it's a really good question, because I think it's important to see a project that works. He came to the Edible Schoolyard, and he spent a week there, and he went to the classes and he watched the children, and he really said, we can do this. We can do this in Africa. We can. And it's that is really important. When I worked on Habitat for Humanity, I saw that we could build, paint a school, build a garden in a day. We think, we've been told it's not possible, it costs too much, we can't do it. And we can do it. And so going to these places where it has happened is very valuable. And maybe that's something you could gather a list for, Danny, of places that are really, finished in what they're working over a period of time. Like I would send people to the Yale garden because it's a working garden and teachers are teaching there, and the students are eating together there, and you're seeing it happen. The edible schoolyards all around this country can be looked up, and I just went to the one in Harlem recently with Jen Newsom when they were out for the climate event in New York, and I was so different than the edible schoolyard because they were using pots, but they had created this beautiful greenhouse, and the kids were so engaged that it doesn't have to be the same, but it really, you need to know that it can be done. And that's where trips for me around the world have done. If anybody wants to go to the American Academy in Rome and see how they eat there, let me know, because seeing is believing. And we have only been seeing disaster right now, war and disaster. And we need to see people feeling empowered and growing their own food. And so collecting those great places from around this country would be incredibly valuable.
What a great idea, Alice. And I think that's something our members, our food tank members can help us with. They can send the ideas
Yes.
of those examples of what's working around the world. You know, I see Stacia Nordine on the chat, and I can't get to you right now, Stacia, but I appreciate what you do with your own life. Alice, I'll send you information about what Stacia and Christoph Nordine do in Malawi, because it's incredible work showing, using their house as an example of permaculture and making sure that everyone in their community learns from it every day, and kids come to their house and eat and learn and enjoy the deliciousness of what they provide. Alice, this has been so inspiring. I am so glad that I had a chance to spend some time with you today. You are, again, a national treasure, and someone I admire so much. And I am just so grateful for all the work that you do. I want to thank our food tank members. Thank you again for joining this first meeting of the year. It's hard to top someone like Alice Waters, but we'll have other experts joining these meetings throughout the year. Again, Alice, so grateful to you, my friend.
And it's my great pleasure. I mean, it lifts my spirits to communicate with your network of people. They're amazing. And
thank you.
We have to do something big together.
I can't wait. I can't wait. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Be well. Stay
Bye-bye.
safe.